Back in the fall of 2013, I was living in a small town called Maple Hollow. It wasn't anything special, just a quiet little place tucked between a couple of hills with streets lined by rustling trees and peeling old houses. I was 19 at the time and had just moved in with my older cousin Jess after finishing high school. Jess had a baby girl and I helped out when I could. That Saturday she practically shoved me out the door telling me to take a break and go do something for myself. So I grabbed my keys, jumped in my beat-up Honda and headed into town. It was chilly, one of those gray, cloud-heavy days where everything looks just a little washed out. My first stop was an old electronics store called Tech Barn. I needed a charger and honestly, I just wanted to be around other adults for a bit. I parked near the entrance and walked inside. The bell above the door giving a hollow jingle that echoed way too long. The place was dim and dusty like time had forgotten it. I grabbed what I needed and headed out without browsing. I was halfway across the cracked parking lot when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, excuse me, miss. Can you help me, please?" It was like someone snapped their fingers in front of my face. I turned and saw a man standing beside this huge, ancient-looking car, a gold Lincoln or something, one of those long, boat-sized ones with rust crawling along the sides. He was older, maybe in his 70s, wearing tan pants, a thick wool sweater, and a weird brown hat with a short brim. He even had one of those faded yellow mustaches you see on men in black and white movies. Everything about him screamed grandpa. But something about his posture, the way he stood too still like he was waiting for me to move first, it made my skin prickle. "I need a quick hand," he said, waving a set of keys at me. "My car's acting strange. When I press the lock button, the doors don't do anything. But the trunk works fine. So weird, right?" I didn't move. Just kind of stood there squinting at him. "Could you just come take a look?" he said, his voice friendly, almost too sweet. I bet it's something simple. "Come on, help an old man out." I smiled, but it was tight. "I don't really know much about cars," I said. "You could probably ask someone in Tech Barn, they might know." He didn't like that. His smile twitched just for a second. Not a full frown, more like a crack in a mask. But then he laughed, shook his head, and said, "You're probably right. I just thought you looked smart. Figured you could figure it out." I started backing up a little toward my car. "Sorry, hope it gets fixed, though." "Wait," he called louder. "It'll only take a second. Come here, I want to show you something in the trunk." Something in the way he said that. It was wrong. My whole body went cold, like ice sliding down my spine. He was already walking to the back of his car, opening the trunk like he was showing me a magic trick. "See?" he called out, peering into the open space. "It closes just fine. No problem here. It's just the doors that won't respond. Come check it out." I didn't move. I looked past him at the trunk, at the deep shadows inside. I imagined climbing in to look closer and hearing the clunk of the lid slamming shut. Then, nothing. That image hit me so hard it made me dizzy. "I really gotta go," I said quickly. "Sorry." I turned and walked fast, maybe even jogged a little, back to my car. I didn't even look back. I just kept repeating to myself, "Don't turn around. Don't look. Just go." As I unlocked my door, I heard him shout something. Not words exactly, just this loud, angry sound like frustration boiled over. Then slam. The trunk shut hard. I slid into my seat and locked the doors, my heart punching at my ribs. Through the rearview mirror, I saw him climb into his car and peel out of the lot like nothing happened. I sat there for a moment, shaking, trying to catch my breath. Maybe he was just a weird old guy, I told myself. Maybe I overreacted, but deep down I didn't believe it. When I got home, I told Jess everything. I expected her to laugh or roll her eyes and say I was dramatic. But she didn't. She went pale and hugged her baby a little tighter. "That doesn't sound right at all," she said quietly. "You don't open the trunk to show someone the doors don't lock. That's not how people act." Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head. His smile, his voice, the open trunk like a mouth waiting to close. At around 2 a.m., I got up and searched online for anything about strange encounters in Maple Hollow. I didn't expect to find anything. I just wanted to prove to myself that it was nothing. But then, I found something. An article popped up. Maple Hollow man arrested in attempted abduction. I clicked it with shaking hands. There was a blurry mugshot of the man. Same hat, same mustache, same gold Lincoln. My stomach dropped. Turns out he had approached another woman in a grocery store parking lot 2 towns over. Same story. Car trouble. I needed help. Trunk involved. She'd walked over. She hadn't been hurt. Thank God. But things got scary fast. He tried to push her toward the trunk and she screamed so loud people came running. He was arrested within the hour. The article said he'd been following women for months, always using the same car problem routine. They found rope and duct tape in his trunk. He lived not far from where Jess and I had just moved. Less than 10 minutes away. After reading that, I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I couldn't stop thinking about how close I'd been, about what could have happened if I'd walked a little closer, about what was waiting in that trunk. Sometimes I still think about him, how normal he looked, how polite his voice was, how many times he might have tried this before someone said no. That day, something deep in my gut screamed at me to walk away. And I'm so glad I listened, because that man wasn't just looking for help. He was looking for someone to disappear. So this happened back in 2013, when I was working part-time at this old mountain lodge called Ash Pine. I was 19 at the time, just out of high school and trying to save up money before figuring out what to do next. The lodge sat deep in the woods just outside a tiny Colorado town most people hadn't even heard of. The place was nice during the day, like really peaceful. You'd hear birds, smell pine in the air, maybe see a deer or two just walking across the property. But at night, completely different story. It got real quiet. Not calm quiet either. That kind of quiet that feels wrong, like the trees are holding their breath. Anyway, I was on the early morning shift, and I mean early. Had to clock in before 5 a.m. Most days I was the only one on the grounds until the cleaning staff came in around 6. The security guard Joe did his rounds, but even he didn't stick to one place for long. There were 2 lots where employees could park, one near the main entrance, and another behind the lodge closer to the woods. I always chose the back lot. It was quicker to get in and out, and I figured it'd be easier to avoid guests asking questions or needing help before I even punched in. So, it's this pitch-black Wednesday morning in late October. Still dark, crisp air. My headlights cutting through fog like a knife. I pull into my usual spot in the back lot, engine humming quietly. Everything still. I remember sitting there for a second, rubbing my eyes, waiting for the heat to kick in. The overhead lights in the lot weren't working. Surprise, surprise, so my headlights were the only thing keeping the dark at bay. I had my music going low, some sleepy indie track I barely remember now, and I was reaching for my keys to kill the engine when I saw movement, right in front of my car. At first, I thought it was an animal. You see deer, raccoons, even the occasional fox around here. But then my brain caught up. No, that was a person, a girl. She came running out of the trees on the far side of the lot, the part that backs up into thick forest. I'm talking deep woods, the kind you don't just walk through casually, especially in the dark. But there she was, maybe 15 years old, blonde hair hanging wild around her face. She was wearing a baggy hoodie and flannel pajama pants, and she was laughing. Not like a nervous chuckle or a silly laugh, full-on giggling, grinning from ear to ear. It was unsettling. She scampered. Yeah, that's the word. Light, quick steps, almost like she was skipping. Her face lit up in my headlights, and she looked like she was in some kind of daze. Her eyes weren't quite focused, like she was looking through things instead of at them. She paused in front of my car, standing dead center in the beam of my lights. And then she waved, not a panicked wave, not help me or I'm lost, just a slow, calm wave. Like she was saying hi to someone she knew. I didn't move. I just stared, heart racing, hand frozen over the keys. Then, without warning, she bolted, straight for the passenger side of my car. That's when I snapped out of it. I yanked my phone off the aux cord, the music cutting off instantly. Fumbled for the lock button, trying to remember. Was it up or down to lock? My hands were shaking. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. She reached the door, pulled the handle once, twice, then started yanking it like crazy. When it wouldn't open, she slammed her palm against the window. Bang, bang. Bang, still grinning like this was the funniest thing in the world, I started yelling, "Get away from my car." Slammed my hand down on the horn. Honk! She didn't flinch. She just kept smiling, her face up close to the glass now, nose practically touching it. Those wide eyes, that same twisted grin. Then, like flipping a switch, it all stopped. She froze. The smile vanished. Her face went blank and she turned around, just like that. No words, no sound. She walked slowly back toward the trees, the exact spot she'd come from. As she disappeared into the woods, she turned and waved one more time, the kind of wave you give someone you're not done with. And then she was gone. I sat there for a long time. I don't even remember turning off the car or walking into work. I just remember the silence. And how suddenly the fog outside the car windows felt like it was pressing in. But here's the part that messes with me the most. Later that day, I asked Joe, the security guard, if he saw anyone near the woods that morning. He just looked at me kind of strange and said, "You mean the girl?" I felt a chill run through me. He said she shows up now and then. Only early, before sunrise. Always by the back lot. Sometimes she just stands there. Sometimes she knocks on car windows. He told me not to worry. She's just curious, he said. Curious. What kind of girl runs barefoot out of the woods in October? Giggles like she's at a birthday party and tries to force her way into someone's car, just because she's curious? I didn't use that parking lot again. In fact, I didn't work there much longer after that. Something about that place changed for me. Every shadow felt too dark. Every creak in the hallway made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the image of her face, so close to the glass, eyes unblinking. I've heard things since. From others who worked there. One guy said he found tiny handprints on his back windshield after a shift. Another girl said she heard laughter coming from the trees while she was closing the kitchen. Nobody ever really talks about her out loud though, like saying it will make her show up again. But sometimes when I'm driving alone late at night, I'll see the edge of the forest out of the corner of my eye. And I wonder, what if she's still watching? What if she wasn't alone? And what if that day she had just been the one they sent out first? Do you ever have one of those moments where something feels off, but you don't realize how bad it was until later? That's what this story is. And even now, years later, I still get chills when I think about it. This all happened back in the fall of 1997, in a small town called Belford, Ohio. I was 28 at the time, a single mom of two little boys, Liam and Carter. We lived on the outskirts of town where the cornfields never end and streetlights are a luxury. Cell phones weren't a thing for most of us back then. We had landlines, and car trouble meant walking or waiting. No instant help. So one day I had taken Liam and Carter to the pediatrician for their flu shots. Their doctor, Dr. Halvers, had just moved into a brand new clinic building off Route 19. It was one of those places that felt like it was built in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by tall grass, woods, and a stretch of highway that got dark real fast once the sun dipped. The doctor's office was an hour away, and since we lived so far, they usually gave us the last appointment of the day, which I appreciated. Fewer people, less wait time. I parked close to the glass doors, unbuckled the kids, and we went in for the usual routine. We were the only ones left when we came out. The receptionist gave me a polite wave as she locked the door behind us and disappeared into the back. I buckled the boys into their car seats, got behind the wheel, turned the key, and nothing. Just this clicking sound. You know the one. The kind that makes your stomach sink. I tried again. Same thing. Click. Click. It was already getting dark and the parking lot lights hadn't even come on yet. I felt my pulse speed up a bit, but I kept calm. I unbuckled myself, got out, went back to the door and knocked. Luckily, someone heard me and let me back in. I asked to use the phone and they handed it to me with this look like they were all ready to go home. I get it, I do, but still. I called the only garage I knew in Belford, Henderson's Auto. The guy I spoke to said it might be a while, which wasn't ideal with two little kids in the back seat and darkness creeping in. But what else could I do? So I thanked them, hung up, and headed back to the car. One by one, the last of the clinic's staff left. Their cars disappeared around the back of the building, and soon enough it was just me, Liam, Carter, and the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. We sat there alone for about 20 minutes. The sky turned from gray to almost black. I was just about to try the key again when a beat-up pickup truck rolled into the parking lot. It didn't have any signs or logos, just rust spots and a loud engine. A man stepped out. Middle-aged, probably late 40s, wearing a grease-stained jacket and jeans. He had a scruffy beard and oil under his fingernails. I looked like a mechanic, honestly. He nodded at me, gave a half smile, and said he was going to pop the hood. I stayed in the driver's seat. I could see his hands move under the hood through that thin slit between the windshield and the open metal. I couldn't see his face at all. He said something about a loose wire. Not the battery, he mumbled. Just a loose wire. He repeated it a couple of times and then said, "If you come up here real quick, I'll show you which one it is. That way you'll know for next time." I thanked him politely but didn't move. Something about his tone, the way he kept asking, it just didn't sit right. I didn't feel scared exactly, but something in my gut said to stay put. Then just like that, another truck pulled into the lot. A newer one. Headlights on. As soon as it did, the man under the hood slammed it shut, spun around, ran to his truck, and peeled out of there without a single word. I sat there stunned, heart pounding. Liam asked who that man was, and I didn't know what to say. Why would he leave so fast just because another car showed up? The new truck pulled up beside mine. The driver got out, clean, uniformed with a Henderson's auto patch on his shirt. He smiled warmly and introduced himself as Randy, said he was the one I spoke to on the phone. Even called me by name. Then he looked down the road where the other truck had disappeared and asked, "Who was that guy?" I let out this half laugh, still kind of shaken. "I thought that was you," I said. "He was already here working on it." Randy didn't laugh. He just looked uneasy. He got to work pulling out jumper cables and opening the hood again. I turned to check on the boys when suddenly Randy was back at my window. He was holding something in both hands. "Is this yours?" he asked. It was this long, thin metal thing, maybe 1.5 feet, like a dagger but with tiny finger holes at one end like scissors. Covered in rust except for the tip, which looked freshly sharpened. I kid you not, the thing looked like it came out of some twisted old horror movie. I shook my head. "Where did you find that?" "Right on top of your engine," he said, like it was just placed there. He didn't hand it to me. Just held it out like he didn't want to touch it either. Then he walked away and laid it on the ground. A few minutes later, once the car was running, he came back around, picked the thing up again and said, "Take a closer look." So I did. It was sharp. Like really sharp. The edges shimmered under the parking lot lights that had finally come on. The rust was mostly on the sides, but the tip was a gleaming silver. It had clearly been sharpened. Recently. "These aren't old," Randy said quietly. "I mean, they look old, but the edges, they were just sharpened. And they weren't stuck down in the engine. They were sitting right on top. It felt like ice ran down my spine. Whoever the first guy was, he had put that thing there. On purpose. When I paid Randy, he didn't smile. He just looked at me and said, "I don't know what was supposed to happen here tonight, but I'm real glad I showed up when I did." He suggested I call the police. Asked where I wanted him to put the blade. I didn't want to touch it. I told him to toss it in the trunk, which he did, carefully. When I got home and the kids were safely inside, I called the Belford police. The officer on the line was nice enough, but said if the item wasn't used in a crime, there wasn't much they could do. I offered to bring it in, but he said there was no need. From my description, though, he guessed it might have been an old surgical shear, the kind used in operations decades ago. Something about the mix of scissors and blade. He said it was unusual but not unheard of. Still, I couldn't sleep that night. Not just because of what could have happened, but because of what almost did. And here's the part that still messes me up. That fall and winter, local news kept reporting on missing women from small towns across the county. Some bodies were found in the woods. Others were never found at all. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if Randy hadn't shown up? What if I had gotten out of the car like that man wanted? I don't know. But I do know this. Ever since that night, I never trust a stranger who shows up just to help, especially when no one's around. and I never ever forget to check under the hood.